Well, looks like that time, not very good, great attendance today, but we're going to get off and running here. Since I can kind of see everybody, if there's a whole bunch of people that get back on the call, um, try to fire off some questions in the text box or virtually raise your hand or something like that. But let's everybody try to mute their mics unless they're talking. And if everybody on the call, whether I know you or not, Seth Barker, First Vice President of ISFSI, we've been doing these virtual happy hours every 2 weeks. Last week kind of I panicked on Wednesday at 2 o'clock my time last week because I thought we were doing it last week, but there's 5 weeks in September, so got off the hook last week. We were all set to go. I had a bunch of people on the call and never went down. But anyways, we started doing this, I don't even know, like 4 months ago now, because of in lieu of the FDIC social of us not getting together and seeing each other's faces and all of our best friends in the fire service from around the country. So we've been getting on the line, so to speak, and just having a roundtable discussion about, the latest, greatest training topics in going around the fire service. And today we're going to talk about training in the Wildland Urban Interface, which is something near and dear to my heart because that's a lot of what we do out here in Big Sky, Montana. So just like to kick it off here a little bit and talk about what that means and what that looks like, and hand it over to one of you guys to kind of get us to the finish line here. But my district is, as most of you guys know, is an island, so to speak, surrounded by national forest. We're about 46 miles away from our nearest mutual aid partner. So our fire districts aren't contiguous, they're separated by the Forest Service. We do have a great mutual aid relationship with the U.S. Forest Service and the Department of Natural Resources. And they are very proactive with helping us out when they're in the area, but they're always somewhere around the state and the country fighting fires as well. So sometimes they're not here as quickly as we would like. We are the definition of urban interface. My entire fire district is in the interface, or intermix, if you will. We have a tremendous threat around us, and this year has been particularly dry. We started off really good with getting a bunch of rain in the springtime, but as most of you guys know, what happens is a lot of rain in the spring equals large fuel loads in the fall when there's no rain. So we're usually about a month, what me and John were talking about, we're usually about a month out of our wildland season in October. Usually September 1st, it's like the switch gets flipped and it starts snowing and raining. We did get a bunch of snow, which cranked out one of our closer fires, which was in the Bozeman area, which was a big, ferocious fire that got out of control within 12 to 14 hours and burned about 14 homes down. We did get a type 1 incident management team on that. That was about 60 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. But we got some snow, chilled that one out, and then it's been dry ever since. So we're kind of resting on pins and needles until we get some rain and snow, because it's very, very dry and very, very dangerous out there. And with hunting season comes a lot of fires, because of the hunters out there will go out for multiple nights and light campfires like everybody likes sitting around, and then they don't realize how dangerous that is right now. So we train on the wildland urban interface strategies and tactics a lot. We fight more wildland fires than structure fires in my district. It's kind of our bread and butter. We're very, very, very good at initial attack and stopping a fire before it gets big or grows big or takes a run on us and gets out into the woods. Once a fire gets out in the woods in our district, it's game on. I mean, it's going to take off and running. So we really try to be very aggressive and very proactive. So what that means is that we train a lot on those initial tactics. And training is all about being prepared, and being prepared sooner and later than you think. And what I mean by that is, we're starting when snow is still on the ground in the spring, we're starting to dust the cobwebs off and focus on our strategies and tactics and our gear. It's not uncommon that we get a wildland fire in the wintertime, believe it or not, because, once in springtime, once that snow starts melting, those dry fuels or those fuels get dried off very, very quickly. And we have had starts in February and March before. So we really got to get those brush trucks dusted off and our gear out and our shelters dusted off, wildland boots and all that stuff to really make a big go of it. And we do a tactic called anchor, flank, and pitch that we're pretty successful with. It's a single engine attack. It takes 4 guys, and it's putting a lot of hose on the ground very, very quickly and running as fast as we can to get to the head of the fire and try to slow that progress down until we can contain it. So with training becomes that sets and reps stuff with that simple tactic has to be an automatic thing for that first in company officer, so they can have this training and context approach where they're looking at the fire and making a risk assessment and not thinking of the actual task. It's very much like doing a 360 and thinking about rescue profiling and building construction and not actually doing the task of 360 yourself. So when you're the first in company officer doing our 360, we're not thinking about putting our SCBA on. We're not thinking about how to manage the thermal imager. We're thinking about access, rescue profiling, second means of access, and fire behavior. And that's what it comes down to with doing a size up on a wildland is that we do repetitive skills in sync with each other to try to accomplish that anchor, flank, and pinch, and I'll explain that a little bit later, so we can get a good read on fire behavior, what structures are threatened, what lives are threatened, and our accessibility, because that's the game, is getting access to these wildland starts. Out in Montana, we're fortunate enough that with lightning comes rain. It's very rare that we get lightning without rain. So even when we get a bunch of starts, we'll get on the radar the next morning or that evening, find out where all the lightning strikes hit, which we weren't allowed or weren't able to do when I first started my career 20 years ago. And we can pinpoint where the lightning touched down, and we can go look at those areas to see if we have any smoke plumes coming out that next morning or that evening before the sun goes down. So that's a very key aspect in 2020 that we can harness that technology. But back to the rain is that, with lightning comes rain here. So we're pretty fortunate that lightning doesn't start a lot of fires. What starts a lot of fires out here is down power lines from big wind cells coming in, and then just careless tourists and campers, having a campfire when they don't even know they're out here on vacation, or throwing cigarette butts out the window and stuff like that. Well, that's enough for me talking for the last 8 minutes. I'll turn it over to Ron. Ron, you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you got going on out there? Thanks for being here, Ron. You're still muted, brother. Can you guys hear him? I can't hear you, Ron.
Yeah, I can't hear you either.
No one can hear you, Ron.
Hey, Ron, maybe try to log out and log back in.
Okay. While Ron's doing that, let's turn it over to John here. John, what's the Wildland Arena like out in your neck of the woods in the big chunk of country up there in Alaska?
We're actually sounds quite opposite from you. Our season is normally early in the year, May, June. Typically have kind of wet Julys in Alaska, rains quite a bit, and we do get a lot of dry lightning events. So, and then the tourists and careless burning and escapements and things like that. So part of our initial, our academy, it basically goes through a year's, a 1-year calendar. So we call it a basic firefighter class. Being a combination department, we kind of cater to a lot of our paid on call folks. And a big part of that, their basic classes, the first 3 weeks, kind of an introductory class, is wildland and urban interface stuff. So we have one of our battalion, he just got promoted to an assistant chief. He's actually on the Alaska Type 1 team, so he does a lot of our wildland training, and then we have some local hot shots that are real friendly to our department that come over and help with that. And we'll talk to farmers and do some burns, some actual live fire training in the springtime, just to get, kind of like you said, get the cobwebs knocked off and just get the guys ramped up for that, so it's just very seasonal. It's this year, like I was talking to you earlier, we kind of escaped it this year. We didn't have a fire season at all this year, so it was kind of different for us. But last year we had a huge fire season up here, so it just kind of goes with the weather. And we've had two hot summers in a row where we've had 90-degree temperatures in my area, which is absolutely uncommon for Alaska to get that hot. So my part of Alaska to get that hot. So it's just kind of feast and famine. We get a lot of wind-driven events. By I live in the place that everybody kind of locally calls the valley, and that's exactly what it is. So in the wintertime, we get north winds, and in the summertime, we get southern winds. So it just, which way the wind blows is how we just have to be real sharp on wind-driven events, whether that be structural or wildland related. So just a lot of situational awareness training and understanding how weather impacts both wildland and the structure fire, fire events.
Hey, Seth.
Yes, sir.
Hey, just on this particular topic, I certainly have a lot more questions than answers, and I just kind of want to learn for my own benefit. Is what kind of administrative stuff goes into this as far as training on the front end? Is there an NFPA standard that governs wildland fire training, and what kind of hours are we talking for initial training? If I'm, say, for example, I'm a chief officer and I apply for some training chief position in some other state out west, I come in knowing nothing about the management of initial training for members in the wildland arena. Like, what are the bullet points that I would need to know and where I would need to reference?
Yeah, good question. So the NFPA standard is weak as far as what, the qualifications for firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, let's say, for the Wildland Urban Interface. So what that basically is, as you can imagine, is the basic needs for somebody to be on the fire line. Well, it's just like saying if somebody who's firefighter 1 is a competent structure firefighter, right? That's kind of the starting point, if you will. But there's the low-hanging fruit out there is a great resource is getting on the DNRC website or the CWGS website or NWCG website and going over their course curriculum. And they have it broken down into pretty much task books that was done from FireScope out in California. And what that project was all about was making California's fire departments have a standardized training program. So when someone would show up on their large fires in California, everybody would be trained up the same way. And what those courses look like, the low-hanging fruit are, basic fire weather, basic construction of fire lines, anchor, flank, and pinch. And they're all broken down into these S190, 120, 110 type courses. And those numbers don't really mean anything, but by building up those building blocks, it gets you competent on calling in a helicopter, constructing a fire line, burning out fuels, fuel management, incident command, and then moving yourself up to be a crew leader, which would be the equivalent to a captain in an engine boss, where you're allowed to run an entire engine and be a single resource or part of a strike team. And then as you move up, being a task force leader or a strike team leader, which is more of that BC assistant chief kind of qualifications. If you follow just the NFPA, you're going to hit all the benchmarks for what your organization needs if you are going to fight wildland fire. But when you're really talking about the big picture effect of the big show coming to your town or going to the big show, then you need to start following NWCG's model, which is a very robust training program that, it's not just taking a class and taking a test. You actually have to physically be on site of a real fire and be with somebody who has a higher certification with you. And then they start checking off these task books. You can do some of the tasks simulated because, we're not all able to go to all these wildland fires all the time. But the beautiful part about it, and I compare it to paramedic school. So when I was in paramedic school, kind of the best time of my career was that first 6 months that I had a senior advisor, if you will, a senior paramedic in the back of the bus with me, not letting me kill anybody, basically. So I could not make any mistakes. And that's exactly what this is you have a very seasoned fire officer with you in the rig or on the line, and he's not gonna let you make mistakes or get anybody killed. So it's really good training. And as soon as you leave, let's say I'm an engine boss, which is kind of 3 or 4 tiers up the food chain, so to speak, I can have somebody underneath me that I can start training on their task book. So it's a very circular training program that's highly effective.
Yeah, it almost makes me a little that level of intricate kind of one-on-one shadowing with a senior person is almost. I wish we had a little bit more of that in the structural environment. Riding along with battalion chiefs more often on fires and things like that. That's a good model.
For sure. Hey, Ron, did we get you working there, buddy?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah, I had to do Brad's trick and go to a cell phone. I don't know. That computer's technology, right? Thanks for having me on today. I'm the emergency preparedness coordinator for the San Ramon Fire Protection District in Contra Costa County in the East Bay of San Francisco. And I don't know, I've got, like most people, multiple hats. I manage the fire investigation team, the fuels management program, EOC, and a couple other things. But I've got about a 30-year, tenured full-time teaching career in fire. So run quite a few of these, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, for about a decade, actually for about 20 years, even before I started at the particular school I taught at. They had a wildland program that ran for about 10 years after I was there. And then we because of some changes in California's curriculum that Seth was kind of alluding to, there was no longer a need to have a basic standalone wildland academy. And then we transitioned to an advanced wildland academy, 250, 60 to about 300 hours. And then that kind of went away. And the only really wildland academy that I'm involved in anymore is for the federal government. It's a very unique wildland leadership program. There's only 16 students selected from around the world to participate. So it's pretty small, not open to the public as a general rule. Not completely. I mean, we've had like students from Australia and a few local government people do that, but they don't get, there's some pay problems there. But anyway, Seth or Brad, did you have specific questions? Or?
Not specific questions, Ron. It's more like, what do you find successful for training and what you don't, and how do the people around your area kind of all get on the same page, so to speak? Because if my fire department was to be if my shift was to magically get transported to Brad's department and we were supposed to go on a mutual aid fire together for a single family residence structure fire, it would be radically different of how we would attack that fire, because we're just not in the same demographic, response profile, blah, blah, blah. Not that we both don't know how to fight fire, but we just do it differently. And so I think maybe you could speak to, Ron, is how do you get everybody on the same page? Because you guys fight a tremendous amount of wildland fire out there in the interface. And how do you know that CAL FIRE and San Francisco and then the suburbs are all gonna play to the same tune?
So I'd probably start by saying what you just said about you and Brad. We won't be on the same page. We might be closer than other people on the wildland issue, but what's that old joke? You can have 15 stations in a department. You got 15 different departments, right? That type of idea. The further away I would say an agency is from wildland, the less likely they are to be, it'd just be like a remote rural California department going to San Francisco to try and do high rise. They'd be completely out of their realm. But there is some commonality, and you alluded to that a bit. We have a robust state fire marshal program that accredits training. I think now there's about 122, maybe 123 two-year colleges in the state, which, for most people, it's like, what are you talking about? We have one, something like that. I don't even know the number that teach fire. The number that are accredited by state fire training to do academies, I'm thinking, is getting close to 50, if not slightly over of that 120 some colleges. But there's colleges that have chosen not to be accredited that also teach. They probably teach the state fire curriculum either way, whether they're accredited or not. And I guess in a nutshell, all accredited academies in the state have a wildland component built into it. And that's the really basic. What would be, we'd almost call that a Forest Service model, basic 32, L180, S190, 130, those type things. But the vast majority, I would say, of accredited academies go a step further and they take on the CAL FIRE curriculum. CAL FIRE refers to it as the basic fire BFA, basic fire academy module. And they're teaching that in the academy so that a student who graduates can either work seasonal work for CAL FIRE or go to the feds or BLM or Park Service or do any of those. And by doing that, they're all running the same curriculum. Now the testing standard might, vary, but it's pretty damn close. So at least conceptually at that level, and that's all, anybody can go online and get that curriculum and look at those lesson plans, or, if they wanted to use it, it's available. And outside of that, there's still some pretty good variation. So where you are, Seth, you guys, with your relationship to the feds, you're probably running, a NASPAC or something like that for your progressive, where a large portion of California runs a Pondosa, a roll instead of that, right? So those two response units show up. If you've never worked with NASPAC or GNAS, depending on which way you want to pronounce it, if you've never seen that, throw one of those on your back, you're kind of lost as how that deploys. So if you have mutual boundaries, those two stations probably work with each other on the two loads, but the further that mutual aid response goes, that confusion can start to develop. But I don't know if we're ahead of the game compared to other people or not that way. It's everybody can pump and roll. Everybody can do some type of progressive hose lay depending on the terrain. The tactics might be slightly different, but everybody will get it done. It's all 1.5-inch hose, right? So if state engines are laying out off Pondosa packs and full 800 feet, a Fed engine can come right in behind with their 1.5-inch loads and continue that progressive hose lay. It just, one's got T's in it and the other's got gated Y's.
So from a training aspect, what we do is, first of all, to kind of let the cat out of the bag in my organization is that, we don't hire zero experienced firefighters, right? They already have some sort of experience, and we don't require firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, but you're probably not going to get in the door without one of those two. So we assume that there's going to be a level of experience coming through the door. And so when we hire them, we go, instead of a traditional academy like Brad runs very well, is we do what's called an operational readiness academy. So we're going over the resume, assuming that they have a fair bit of experience walking through the door, and then we just train them up on how we do things so they can be operationally ready once they hit the shift and be an asset. Within that first year, so to speak, we call that the probationary year. We integrate all of our basic wildland stuff within that. And that first year looks like the basic FEMA ICS, and then we do what Ron was talking about, human factors in the Wildland Fire Service, L180, S130 is basic firefighter training, introduction to wildland fire behavior. We throw in a NIMS class, and then we do this, state fire refresher or wildland fire refresher, which is basically, fire behavior and digging lines and pulling progressive hose lays. And that's all within their probationary year. And then we build it out right from that. So when our training program revolves around is that first year, you got to concentrate on being an asset and knowing the basics within our organization. Then that second year is our advanced firefighter year. And that's where we teach you all the stuff we didn't have time in that first year and a half. So from a structural component, that's more of the tech rescue stuff. That's more of the advanced extrication stuff. But in the wildland arena, we filter in there the kind of the sophomore and junior classes, if you will, to kind of lead you up towards that engine boss qualification. And those are the S219, S211, S212, and what those are: chainsaws, pumps and water use, firing operations, intermediate wildland fire behavior, and whatnot. I know those numbers might not mean a lot to some of you guys on the call, but they mean a whole heck of a lot to the people that work out in the interface, like John, myself, and Ron. So, and then as we get up to that company officer level, we're on our third year. Then there we start pushing them towards the driver operating engineer within the structure firefighter things. And then we also incorporate that type of training in their third or fourth year in the wildland arena too, with more tender ops and water shuttling. And then by the time we hit that company officer eligibility, which is 5 years in our organization, then we should have already had those wildland, basic wildland and intermediate wildland courses. Now we're dealing with more of the advanced courses like engine boss and crew boss. And that's when you're in charge of people's lives and you're going out there and making good decisions for 4 other people. So I don't know if that trajectory makes sense, but for everybody on this call, I got that all pretty easily laid out in a spreadsheet. and an Excel sheet. And then I also have a best practice manual that we have within our organization for wildland firefighting. I'm happy to share with everybody. I put my email up at the top there. So fire me an email, I'll send you all my stuff. Okay, what else? Who else has got something to chime in out there? Bob, you got anything to add?
Well, I work in an airport, so we don't do a whole lot of wildland. The only time we do wildland is basically when we get activated on a task force, which this year in Oregon happened quite a bit. We had some pretty big fires. And they almost went to California again with the task force, but they ended up going. What we're realizing in our department is we're having to load from the top down as far as the training, because we realize if we don't have engine bosses and that type of stuff and crew bosses, we can't go on the fires because we don't have anybody to lead that engine or lead that group. So that's what our challenge is right now, is getting all of our company officers trained up to like an engine boss level, which means we're going to transition to sending more officers on the wildland deployments, because that's the only time we have a chance to check off those task books like you're talking about, to try to get the top loaded first, so then the rest of the firefighter ones and stuff will have a chance to go, because we'll have enough people that we can fill our engine to go with the task forces when they get tasked, when they get asked to go. So that's what it is for us. But like I said, working at an airport, I mean, we got grass and a few shrubs. We don't do wildland on a regular basis at all. And when we do have a grass fire, we put out the crash truck, because then you don't, you just squirt it down with the turret and not even have to get out of the truck. Works really well. Anyways, that's what I got.
A question, Seth. Maybe you guys can fill me in a little bit on how some of that stuff works. In the wildland environment, I hear a tremendous amount of, deploying long ways away with resources and teams and things like that. I mean, me in Dayton, Ohio, taking an engine to a big factory fire, at Columbus, an hour away, would never happen. But it seems like in the wildland environment, that type of long range deployment happens somewhat regularly. So how does that all work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd start the answer off there, and Ron, please chime in when you want, is that, you got to get out there and get experience, right? So the whole part about getting experience is being able to go and help each other out, because when the show comes to your town, you want everybody who's like, oh yeah, those Big Sky Fire guys, they were awesome, I'm going to go help those out. And so when you punch that ticket and say, hey, we're doing a state call, and that's usually through the DNRC. And then once we unlock federal dollars, like California does quite a bit these days, is that it opens up the financial engine that anybody can put a strike team together with the right qualifications and go over and help those guys out. And we as an organization have made that a priority, because you can never get enough experience on this stuff. It's just like structure firefight. When you're in a district like my own, where we only fight 2 to 3 structure fires a year, you just don't get a lot of experience in that. So you got to go out and find it. As far as deployments go, first of all, like in Alaska and Montana, everything's 3 hours away where I live. So, going an hour away for a mutual aid event for structure fires is not uncommon for a big commercial event. That's not, Bozeman Fire comes and helps us out, and they're an hour away. And I usually have the fire still going by the time they show up. So they still get to do some work. But we've been going out to California quite a bit. Matter of fact, our guys just got back about 3 weeks ago from California. And as soon as we got back, they called us to come back out again. We were tapped. Organizationally speaking, though, you got to be all in, because if you send out, to Bob's point, if you send out, your senior captain with your 3 best and brightest on an engine company to go out and help the California boys out, everybody else has got to backfill those positions, because you create this big void within your organization that you got to backfill. So everybody's got to be all in. Me personally, my days to go into California are over. I don't want to go and sleep on the ground for 2 weeks and be miserable out there, but I'm sure as heck will fill everybody's overtime shift and be able to go home at night, So from an organizational standpoint, you got to make the decision of, this is what we're going to do, and support each other in doing that. It's not just about the money, which is hugely awesome going out to California and getting paid for 2 weeks overtime, but it's the experience and it's checking off the task book. One of my, my mirror in my fire department, kind of my partner in crime, he just went out there for 2 weeks and all he did was sit in a buggy with his senior advisor and he ran a whole flank of one of the fires there and got tremendous experience. So when the show comes back to our district, that guy's solid, man. He was in the real deal fire, running multiple crews, and had the senior advisor over his shoulder, making sure he's not making any mistakes. So deployments
I like that there's a lot of, bring back potential to you go learn at these big ones. And then, like you said, when the show comes to your town, you have some of that firsthand experience. That's a fantastic, tangible and intangible benefit right there.
Yeah. Being on a really big fire, doing structural protection in California for 2 weeks is more than most people will see in my state. That's a big time experience right there. So Ron, we like coming to California, so keep on calling us, man.
Well, I'd have to agree. I think, Brad, anytime you can get people qualified that can be dispatched through the national system, particularly that discussion, like Bob said, trying to get people from the top down, you get them out and you get them out to the right spot, which you often, that's not, you don't get to say, well, I only want to go, I only want to go to Big Sky, Montana. It doesn't work that way. Once you're in the queue, you could be headed to Oregon and get diverted to Arizona, en route. But what you bring back to the district operationally, not wildland, but large fire organization, all these other, you get to see these engines all over the country, and you go, well, that's a pretty cool idea. Never thought about doing that. I would encourage people should be sending as many as they can. If your contracts are correct through your state mutual aid system, you're being paid, you're being reimbursed for both the person that goes, the backfill, and then most people have an administrative. And administrative fees, can range from 16, 17% into the mid 20s. It's kind of weird how it works, but I mean, there's agencies in California that physically get billions of dollars just off the admin fee. That's how, we'll see, like, oh, there's 50 people from that department here in Colorado. Why are they there? Well, that department caught on to this. It's not just a good learning experience, it's a potential money maker for them. So there's lots of benefits to getting your people into the system to do that.
Yeah, and that comes again from being organizationally savvy with all this stuff. I've weathered 4 different administrations and had 4 radically different fire departments that I've worked for without it ever changing where I report to work. So, my prior administration, was adamantly against it, adamantly against sending anybody out of our town, and they'd send, cautiously around the state. But whereas my current administration, they're all in, and they've made that organizational shift of saying, hey, we're gonna do this because we recognize that we want people to come do this for us. And so again, it's not about the money, but our last deployment to California, it paid portal to portal, so that's time and a half from when they left Station 1 to when they returned 16 days later. They're getting time and a half. And then it paid for all the overtime backfill for the guys to backfill their shifts. And then it paid per day for that engine when it was out of our district until it got back. And that was written, just like Ron was saying, that was written into our contract. So our fire department, when all the stuff is paid for and all the salaries and wages are paid for, the fire department made about $18,000 profit just for 2 weeks deployment, and that's new wildland gear right there, so it's worth it, not just an experience way. It's not, again, not about the money, but it kind of is, to be honest.
And you've got, if you've got, and of course, like Seth said, he had, an administration didn't support it, but if you got one that does support it, what you really want is to try and, slowly rotate your people through the incident command team positions, because now they're on a rotation. This year it's probably pretty miserable. I doubt, you're gone and instantly, as soon as you got home, your team was reactivated you were right back to another fire. There's probably, just zero downtime. But from a learning experience, absolutely invaluable and those positions are open to all local government across the nation. You can apply to a national team. It's about this time of year, I think, when those applications go in. And you don't have to be you need to be, qualified for firefighter and some things, but if you want to be a situation unit leader trainee, you can apply to be a trainee, and then, you're going to get called to be a sit stat, and you'll be working as a sit stat. So, it's exceptional opportunities. And, at one time, California, we had 12 teams, state teams, and I know Oregon has teams, Feds have teams. And then we went to 9 teams, and then I think they went to 8. I can't think now it's 6. And there's always, comment on why that is, but to be blunt, we can't have enough people to field 12 teams anymore. So the spots are available for people who are really aggressive and want to do that type of stuff.
Hey, Scott,
what is
do you have something, Brad?
No, good.
Scott, we're talking about training in the Wildland Urban Interface, and I know you got some stuff to add to that. You're right in the thick of it as well over there. So what do you guys do for training to get you guys up to speed for not just within your department, but, for responding to mutual aid events to make sure that we're all singing to the same sheet of music?
Yeah, for us, S-130-190 and red card is mandatory for the department. Beyond that, it's kind of up to the individual. So we'll get some opportunities in a normal year when we don't have everything shut down. There's generally 2 major wildland academies that are put on in the state by the State Department of Fire Prevention and Control. And then there's other local offerings depending on the departments. So we do actually have one, a type 6 that we deploy. We've got both of our chiefs are crew boss or engine boss or higher. We have one other engine boss, and then the other 2 officers are working on that. This is the first year that we've been a deployable asset. So we're kind of spooling up, trying to get some more people qualified. We've got a few Sawyers, a couple of crew bosses, that sort of thing. So we're just kind of spooling up in that direction.
Yeah, we make it mandatory to be an engine boss to be a captain, because we recognize that, and that's that's not an easy certification to obtain, and because first of all, on every mutual aid deployment, whether it's wildland around the state or going across state lines, we always send a company officer as oversight, whether that's a VC or a captain, to make sure that we have somebody looking out for our guys' safety. But to be a captain, written into the acting captain task book within our organization, you have to be an engine boss, because that's where we think we're going to be doing the most work, and we need to have the most solid protection behind our guys. So, with engine boss comes, it's just like doing your EMS certification. For those people that don't know, you can't just go right for your engine boss certification. You got to get all the low-hanging fruit to get up there and get that qualification checked off.
Yeah, with us being with us being kind of new to that, we haven't had that previously, because pretty much everything we had done up to that point, other than real local mutual aid, was structural based. But now we're kind of starting to work that way. Like I said, I'm working on my crew boss right now, and then obviously I'll roll right into working on my engine boss. If they put on the Winter Academy, I'll be taking that class this year, and then kind of progressing that direction. That's the way all of our officers are going.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. And we were exactly the same position you were in, Scott, where, we were just kind of doing what we've always been doing. And then one time that we went to a really big event, we're like, oh, we need to up our game here and really start playing ball with everybody else, because we just weren't getting outside of our county, so to speak, to really see what everybody else was doing. Another really cool thing the state of Montana does, and that's sponsored by the DNRC, is this thing that's called the CAT Camp. And what it is it's 4 days where we pick a site on DNRC land, usually with some sort of good, fun, live fire availability to do. And then we put on a mock wildland scenario where we actually light real fire. We attack the fire. We set up incident command from the top down and from the bottom up. So we do initial attack or simulate type 2 and type 3 teams already being there, and everybody starts checking off either coursework. We'll do some impromptu lectures. We'll offer 1 or 2 certifications within that CAT camp of 4 days, but we actually, from the simulation-based checkoffs in the task book, we're actually doing it on live fire. So for example, we get the Sawyer certification or the live fire ops or calling in a helicopter, and it's real, right? So there's, there'll be 60 to 80 firefighters on scene from, 20 different agencies, and we crank it out. It's a really, really good, well-run program that we get. It's not like, okay, we're faking where the fire is with cones and streamers. We're like, there's a fire, go ahead and let's attack it, and then let's do some good incident management for the next 4 days on it. And that's been super successful for us. So even if we're not getting deployed or it's a low fire season, we're still moving towards that educational track and getting things checked off. Go ahead.
Just another, sorry, various random questions, just trying to fill in some gaps in my head. How important are firefighter line of duty deaths in the wildland training environment? So does NIOSH do reports for firefighter line of duty deaths, or is there some other mechanism in place? And how do those types of incidents kind of play into training?
Yeah, and Ron, I'd like to hear your input on this, but all of them are tracked, and they're very serious. They're taken very, very, very seriously in the wildland group, and all of them are studied, and it's usually third party. So an agency's officers that come in and investigate it that wasn't involved in the event. But yeah, it's the lessons learned. It's what not to do next. It's that classic NIOSH top 5, but it doesn't relate to structured fire, and it relates to wildland firefighting. But Ron, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, there's always more to the story than the report, as most people are aware if you've ever been involved with an incident and then read the report. There's time limitations on most reports. It's not like the FAA where they have 4 years to look at assessing the crash. And really, when it's done, they probably have covered just about every issue in that Cessna crash that you can cover. So the feds have a 45-day limit. It's been argued that should go away, and that some of those reports have been maybe lacking in depth because of that. Some states take the reports and then run them up the food chain, and at multiple levels, they kind of get cleaned up, and then they eventually even sometimes go to legal and get cleaned up. But still, at least from my standpoint, having been in education a long time, it doesn't matter kind of what happened in that report process. The report's still a valuable tool. And I would think that most departments, particularly smaller departments, or departments that just don't do a lot of wildland, that anytime you're doing wildland skills, take 5 minutes, take 10, and grab, there are hundreds, if not thousands of case studies out there that you could use, and just have a discussion about, hey, what happened here? Not the finger pointing thing, but really trying, you maybe go down the human factors road a bit. Why did they do X, as opposed to just saying, well, they were dumbasses and did X. And use that as a lead into the training, because if you're doing firing, if you're doing helicopter safety, if you're doing progressive hose lines, there's a dozen reports on every one of those where somebody was hurt or killed. And that's kind of your catch and your lead in, if you're using that preparation step type of model. But, and then I don't know what, post South Canyon, South Canyon 1994 was a pretty pivotal event for the feds. One of the many things that came out of South Canyon is, most people have probably seen them, but there's facilitated learning analysis. So instead of the old classic report, which was a more, okay, they did X, they violated the 10 and the 18, blah, blah, blah. It is designed in many ways so that the investigation team can talk with people, and they're not threatened by subsequent legal action or disciplinary action. And those, I think, are quite enlightening. Let me just say that I would really stress, to try and get out those facilitated learning analysis documents. They're all available. The best place is probably Wildland Lessons Learned. federal facility out of Arizona. You can just type wildland lessons learned, and it'll take you there. There's tons of stuff on that site related to safety, but it's also about the biggest archive of documents, including some that, I mean, I probably worked for 15 years to find an actual honest-to-God copy of the Dude Fire that wasn't redacted, and, almost had to cut somebody's hamstring to get the thing. And now it's a public document just loaded down there on that site. Anybody can go look at it. And well, now there's even a staff ride for the Dude Fire. So, you can go down that. But NIOSH does the report. So, I mean, they're mandated, right? NIOSH has to look at all firefighter fatality reports. But you're probably, if it's a wildland fire fatality, you're going to get 4 or 5 reports. If it's in the state of Oregon, Oregon's going to do one. NIOSH is going to do one. OSHA is going to do one. The department might do one. We see that with some frequency where they independently look at the fire and compare the reports. So, there's a ton of data available. And I can get those URLs and links to anybody. If, Brad, if you want those, to bounce those out to people, or Seth can, that, people could take a look at those at, their leisure.
Maybe even, Ron, maybe even throw a couple over in the chat if you get a chance in the next few minutes.
Into what? Oh, into chat?
In the chat on here. That way, anybody that's listening, maybe if they're not familiar, or myself included, we could just grab the links out of that chat box over on the right side.
Copy. I would love to do that, but I don't have a chat link for some reason. So I'm looking at all my links. I'll see if I can figure that out while we're talking here.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think what would be more effective, Ron, is emailing some links to me, or I can email them to Jamie, because the problem with these happy hours is we start rifling a whole bunch of gridded information in the chats, and when people that don't have time to be on the call today but still watch it don't have the opportunity to see the chats.
Yeah.
So it'd be better just to email it to Jamie or myself, and then we can push it out when this thing goes to our platform on our website. It'll be on there by Wednesday or by Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, and since we're kind of on a website ID, I can't bypass. Besides the Wildland Lessons team down in Arizona, there's the Wildland Leadership team out of Boise. So their website is exceptional. If you're doing training and you're interested in, it's also the home of all of the nationally supported staff rides. So all staff ride data is stored there, including what staff rides are, if you're not familiar with that process. But the reading lists, it's just, I'll send that one out, because if you're a training officer, it is a wealth of potential for you to, surf that site.
Yeah, awesome. That's very, very good information. So Brad, I think also just to wrap that subject up is I think wildland firefighting is very similar to structure firefighting in the sense that when someone does make a mistake or someone does have a close call, they're not empowered to speak up and say, hey, this is what happened, this is what the mistake I made, and this is why, because you don't want to be looked at that light. And we're getting there in the structure world, but in the wildland world, we're still not getting there. I mean, the fire that we were on a couple weeks ago in the Bridgers, about 65 minutes away from me, was a really, really, really bad fire, and it took off like crazy. And as I said in the beginning, burned down 11 homes very quickly, but 2 guys got burned over. And it was the type of fire that nobody should have been even remotely near the head of that fire. And why 2 guys got burned over is still a big mystery. Luckily, minor injuries, but I mean, it could have been real bad. But there's no report coming out from that saying, hey, this is what we did wrong, and this is why, and this is how we got caught, because people are still in that mentality on the wildland side of, they want to be tough and they want to go to more calls and they don't want to admit they made mistakes. So the culture hasn't really shifted, at least in my experience. I don't know what Ron thinks about that, but we're still getting there, man. Still getting there. What do you think about that, Ron?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, particularly state and local government, I think, is more reluctant to identify that. I don't know why the reasons are. The feds are somewhat mandated because of the Again, those issues from 1994 and the Tri-Data report, and a bunch of other things that triggered, like, you must do this, or they collectively said we're going to do this. But still, there's near misses and burnovers that go unreported all the time. You know, when I talk to former students, every year they have stories of, you know, at different levels, why that, you know, didn't go down that way. And of course, the thing we do terrible for both structure and wildland or hazmat and everything else is we only look at catastrophe. You know, we've kind of, in the wildland side, embraced the idea of the staff ride. At least the feds have, and a number of states are starting to go down that route. And it was stolen from the Marines and the Army. You know, that's where the staff ride originated from. But if you really go look at the Marines and the Army, when they go to staff rides, if you're, you know, going to be a major or a captain or an E7 or something at your next school, about 50% of what you study are battles where you got your ass kicked, and about 50% of what you studied are battles where you won. And we don't do, you know, when a fire goes well, we all go home. So if you want to report for training to, you know, show people how things should be done, we physically don't have them. Been discussed that we should be doing that, but we won't deploy an investigation team to look at success. And that's really difficult for all of you that are training officers, because you just start to sound like, right? Oh, it's Dr. Death. Here he comes. He's going to tell me about crap that's going to go bad on the fire, you know, where we don't, yeah, it's a frustrating gig. I don't know, maybe one of the youngins on here will change that in their career.
Well, good. Anybody else got anything to add that's called in, or with some pending questions or concerns or challenges that you have in your organization? Like I said, I'm more than happy to share all of my training platform with everybody on the call or with ISFSI and pay it forward. So feel free to reach out and find me on the ISFSI platform. Kind of wrapping. Go ahead, John.
I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about that 4-day CAT class that you were talking about.
Yeah, I can send you the information and what we actually do. And, you know, again, it's DNRC run because it's the magic behind it is DNRC wants capable structure firefighters as mutual aid partners to come to the fires, right? So it's in their best interest to provide sound training for us to come and play by their rules, you know. So it's a really, really cool thing. I mean, I don't even pretend that I was the mastermind behind it, but it sure is awesome. We try to, you know, we're so committed to it that we send guys on overtime over there to do it. It's not a volunteer.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Seth, do you guys, like in Oregon, for us to get our task book signed off, we have to have a fire number associated with that fire. So like when they do the couple wildfire schools here, they give it a state fire number and run it as it's an actual fire, kind of, so the task force can get signed off. Do you guys do the same thing in your state, or does it not that much?
No, because we're getting our task book signed off in multiple states. You know, we just have to have the signature and the credentials of the person that's signing it off attached to that, and then you can look up. I forget where you look it up, Ron, with NWCG, and they got an ID number for each person that, you know, each person's in this database, and I forget what it's called, but do you know, Ron? So like if I'm an engine boss,
you're talking about ROS, Resource Ordering System?
Yeah, exactly. And so you can look up those people's names and numbers, and so you know it's not just Seth Barker signing you off, Bob, and I'm not just some nobody from, you know, Florida or something like that doesn't fight any wildland fire. There's validity behind those signatures. So that's kind of how we get around that, or play it.
Yeah, but, you know, what I would suggest, contacting whatever, is it ODF for you? Oregon Department of Forestry?
Yes.
And maybe develop that relation so that you can get a incident number for a training. We do that on that federal program I was talking to you about. It's only 16 students, but it runs for 6 weeks. And we have incident numbers. And then when we bring local government people in as instructors or support, particularly fire line medic type things, you know, from my agency, San Ramon, we send them to that. And that we can, just like you said, because we have an incident number, we can sign off tasks. And, on the federal stuff, some has to be done on an active wildland fire. Some can be done in training. Some can be done in the classroom. But absolutely, I would try and pursue that avenue.
Does that help, Bob?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're doing, but I didn't know if that was the same way in the other states, because like I said, we can't just at the station sign people off on stuff, because obviously a lot of what we do also, but we have to actually be on a fire or have a state fire number associated with it before it will be a valid task completion. The biggest one for our guys is like talking to a helicopter, and there's a couple others that I'm sure there's a stumbling part for everybody else. And so, which is funny, working at an airport, we're like, oh, we could do that. Oh, wait, we don't have a fire number. We got to wait till we go somewhere where there's a fire number to be able to get that signed off. But anyways.
Yeah, the ironic thing for us is that we go to California to get a whole bunch of stuff signed off, yet we don't honor any certification from California in the state of Montana, which is tremendously screwed up. So, because we've hired a lot of guys from California on our fire department. I think we're 5 guys from the greater San Diego area on our department, and none of their certs counted. But we grandfathered them all in because they're badasses. So
yeah, and we're not much better. We just started reciprocity. So
yeah.
I mean, we finally recognized ISFSI Pro Board, because we felt we didn't need to, and we were about the last state to go ISFSI Pro Board.
Yeah.
And then recently, State Fire Marshal even has some other mechanisms in place, So I think that's system wide. It's like, yeah, we come, yep, go retake everything.
Yeah. Well, good guys, good talk. I think we're kind of in the home stretch here, unless anybody has anything to add. I really appreciate everybody's time. Ron, specifically, I appreciate you taking time out of your day and coming on this call. And I'm going to stay on if anybody has any questions, but we'll wrap this thing up, and then we're 2 weeks out from the next happy hour. So I hope everybody joins. And if you have a burning topic, I'll just do Mike's job here now. If you have a burning topic out there that you'd like to either A, talk about, or B, get a discussion going about, let's fire that off to Mike or myself's way or Brad's way, and we can make sure we get the right players to have a couple SMEs on. But again, this round robin discussion is way more powerful than just sitting and listening to John or Brad talk the whole time, and or me, which I've talked too much already. So I've actually talked more than Brad on this call, which is absolutely
Hey, just the others tuning in there, Casey, Chris, Timothy, and we see you all out there. Anything to add? No go. All right.
okay. Well, thanks guys. Appreciate you. Everybody be safe. Hope it starts raining and snowing if you're in the Wildland arena. And we'll see you guys soon. Stay in touch. Shoot me an email if I can help you guys out in any way. Thank you. Thanks, Ron.
Hey, Seth.
Nice job, Seth. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Yeah, John.
Hey, man. So one topic that I'd like to be part of or listen to, more importantly, is our department is going through some pretty significant growing pains right now. We're going more from combination to career type of a department. And obviously is causing some morale issues on both sides of the house, and some entitlement issues and some hiring issues. And so I know that we're not unique in this problem. So if we could have something, together like that, or hook me into somebody that has gone through this transition from going from more of a combination to a career model, boy, I'd sure appreciate it.
Yeah, I've lived it for the last 10 years of my career, so I can help you out one-on-one, but let's get a discussion going round table so we hear everybody's views and that's a really, really good subject. And I'm with a lot of people at ISFSI have good experience with that. So cool. I'll make it happen.
Sweet.
But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I've lived that scene. When I first came on, I was one of 2 paid guys on my department, and now we're fully career. So
yeah. What are you saying, Ron?
I used to try and go through all of them, but I've not done that for years. All of the the National Fire Academy, everybody who was EFO, and they'd file their reports, right? I try and like look at them all and find the ones that were really interesting. But what I can remember is there is a ton of people who have done projects in EFO related to that. Trials and tribulations of transitions through departments. I bet you if you went inside into the archive and just started typing, different versions of that topic, you're going to get inundated with papers. How do you do it? Some of them are going to be, we haven't done it, we want to do it, what do we do? And others are going to be like post-analysis. Okay, this is what went well, and this is where we stepped on things, and that type of stuff. So might be a thought as a starting point.
That's a good point. That's a good idea. Cool.
And if they get a report, there's somebody there you can call and talk to also.
All right. Yeah, appreciate that.
All right, guys. Be safe out there. Call me if you need anything. Good seeing everybody. Thanks for being on.
All right. We'll see you guys.
All right.
See you guys.
See you guys later.